Salaam. It is time to connect some dots for you. Dots surrounding two October tales that I want to tell you. The tale of October 8, 2025, of an event that took place in Pakistan, and the dot that is the October 7th, 2023 event, I'll call that, which took place in the so called Mid East. You can call that by any other name. So, most of the world is familiar with this situation. A good part of the world is familiar with this situation also, and certainly Pakistanis are. This event was a massive earthquake and a literal earthquake that took the lives of around 80K to 90K, that is 80,000 to 90,000 people. And likewise, this event is, I will just call it an event, all right, because different people described with different intensity and different points of view. This is more incontestable. It was a little earthquake that shook the earth. Nobody could define it in their own words and perspective, but this is an event that requires different perspective, and we want to integrate them. This is why I will not define this at the get-go, but I will tell you how these events impacted certainly my psyche, and what were some of the background events before and after that took place around these events, and how they're shaping your life. Now, October 8th shaped my life and shaped the life of Pakistan in massive ways, and I'll tell you how. A lot of people would not know this story. And October 7th definitely is shifting the lives of people around the world. And in this instance, people are deliberately seeking to change their lives. Like, I don't want to live the old way. I don't want to be part of the delusional or operational matrix around the world. But they don't have the tools to change their life in most cases. Some of the people have some ideas, but most are seeking to connect, sort of like a tapestry, like have a grid, like have a support network. It is already there. Those of us who know it, those of us who see it, can already see it, but many people are shaken and stirred by these events. I am here to help you, the reader, the viewer, the listener, the watcher, the person that you are, and your families. I have the tools right here. My name is Hubb'Allah. I work as an integral thinker, and I develop systems framework. And my work is about pulling people out of a world of oppression, compression, repression, conflicts and fights, and delivering us all to a place, ourselves and the other, ourselves and the person that we think is an adversary, to a place where human beings can reach some kind of salvation, at least relevant salvation, at least somewhat a better place, and then intentionally turn our world into a better world, because this will only be changed with intentional practice and not through accidents. So, for intention, sorry, intentional practice and not through accident or incident. So we want to rule out accident and take account of incidents, sorry. We watch these, but we move towards intention. Don't mind how I mess up my fingers. That'll be part of our work. Right. So this is what we'll be here for. And let's just jump into this. This is Ramallah Hubb'Allah. This is my work. These are my channels. These are the two channels on which you'll be seeing this video. And these are two extra channels about my work and about my daughter's work. And my work is about what I call the eco-feminine, the system that brings human beings together on one page, whereas other systems push us apart. And why do they do that? We'll talk about that in the passing. So let's get started. What I'll be telling you going forward is, I'll try to keep it as short as possible, is the story of the events that took place. And let's get started with Pakistan earthquake. So my story will be personal and will weave in some global events, but I'll keep it, it's a story uh, that I will tell as the witness of history that you haven't heard about or known about, but I know this tale and I've watched this tale. So what happened on October 8th in Pakistan? I was awakened from my sleep around, I don't know, 9, 10-ish or something. And somebody called me and they said, do you even know what happened? And I said, what happened? And they said, go and check the television. There is an earthquake that has taken place. So I came out of my room where I was sleeping, because I didn't have a job at that time. And I was teaching entrepreneurship in Pakistan to MBAs. So I was teaching entrepreneurship. And I was awakened by somebody whom I was walking away from in my life because I did not find them reliable. So, literally, when the earthquake took place, it was more of a personal event to me how everything was shaken. That person walked away from our life literally on that day due to other background events that happened. They met somebody else and they moved on. And it has something to do with my job and career and my life going forward and where I wanted to relocate and also my personal relationships. We'll not go more into that, but that event literally shook me personally. Prior to that event, I had a job in media which lasted from 2003 July to May 2005. In 2004 December, an epic tsunami had taken place, and that tsunami shook me. And somehow my heart told me I had a job in media, right? So, and to be precise, it was, for those who know it, especially Pakistanis would recognize, Geo Television, a large private network, which I had joined in its early phase. It literally launched in 2003 after some preliminary work. So in 2004, I was at my desk and I was already studying things about internal journeys and was particularly studying Idris Shah, a Sufi. I was studying his book, The Way of the Sufi. Don't mind my background noises. I am sitting very close to the street. Up my balcony come the sounds of motorbikes, which particularly appear when I start doing my videos. So that's funny. Or maybe I pay more attention to them when these videos are being made. So the tsunami occurred in 2004 in December, and I was literally shaken. I was shaken, my tears were flowing, and I was like, the world is shifting shape. There's something happening. I was part of a corporate world where I felt things were really cold, and there was a path to just rising up and above, and seeking career rise in ways that I wasn't particularly seeking it. It was making me feel very dissociated with myself and with my family, even though I loved my job. I was getting elevated in my workspace. I was being taken up from my starting position, and I was by that time I was even giving advice to CEO, and sort of unofficially became the CEO's advisor. Started putting that on my emails, etc., as my sign. So I was actually advising CEO of Geo Television about corporate matters in particular, and then they would use what was my genius brain to solve many issues. Anyway, so the 2004 December tsunami happened, and one of my skills is I should give you a bit of my background. I have an MBA degree, and I have had a huge interest in IT, and I also do. I was also intuitively drawn to scan data. I would open the internet and just read it, like how ChatGPT reads it these days and synthesizes it. I would synthesize the data, and I would reach some conclusion and devise policies, etc. And I would go from there to devising solutions. So I was being tapped into that work. In fact, it's so funny. Just tell you on the side, when I was in Geo, I was getting paid. Sort of net of income tax about 25K per month. And I left Geo in 2005. May just literally walked out, and I was called back to Geo exactly about a year later, I think about June 2006. And when I was walking back, I was given an assignment, and I'll tell you what the assignment was. The assignment was you have to make a profile of Geo, like you have to profile all the departments and just basically write a short book, which the CEO of Geo could present to other people when he met them. And when I was being driven towards Geo in my vehicle, I was like, I'm going to charge 70K bucks. I really am going to charge my worth. And you know how much they committed to pay me? 670K. So my worth was like 10 times of what I was thinking. So I was a person who used data to solve problems, like big problems. And I was doing what was later came to be called big data as well. Like you scan large populations and you scan them for trends or whatever. You spot the problems, you spot the opportunity. Depends upon what you're looking at the population for. Like, what is your gaze? Are you looking at them to extract some opportunity for you? Are you looking at them to serve them? The good thing, or the benevolent, or a humane thing about me was that when I look at the population and their problems, I look for what they need, what their dire needs are, and I want to serve them through my knowledge of data and by creating some solutions. So I was good with that. Even though I'm not a technical IT person, I am somebody who can arrange information, like do the bigger design work, while not exactly doing the nitty gritties of IT. So the tsunami of 2004 happened, and I started crying at my desk, and I started looking this thing up on the internet. Internet used to be kind of more pure at that time. You had more informational things. You did not have data created by people, sometimes some of which would be false. There was, of course, a lot of falsehood in the internet right from the start as well. But today, you need different kind of matrices and different kind of intelligence to sort through what is false and what's true, and then determine the truth. So anyway, this happened while I was studying that. I studied that an IBM team, there are a lot of volunteer teams that went to resolve this issue of the tsunami and help with the volunteer work and cleanup work. So I happened to read about an IBM team which read there and which use their data mining and data um, curation skills and data management skills in order to sort of put together the data of what was happening, drive some insights, and then make them actionable. They were probably working with rough data, as in who passed away, who's lost, who's injured, etc. But data helps you. So decision makers need to look at data in order to help things, in order to send shipments to the right place, in order to stop shipments, in order to decide what is needed and what not. So I studied that. In May 2005, I walked out of Geo cold one day and said, I'm not going back. And my CEO tried to call me back, um, and said, well, why don't you work a few days from the office and a few days from home? And I was like, no, I'm not coming back. I was really stressed out. I was going through a personal transformation. I was going through some situationships in my personal life. I was doing work for people and helping them out, and was not getting me the right kind of gain that I needed back. I felt my income was too low compared to the work that I was doing, which turned out to be correct. And also, I just found the atmosphere of the media office very cold, and very physically painful. And the reason is, when you are working near studios, like actual television studios, I was told they need to be maintained at a certain temperature. Otherwise, the wires will catch fire, which they did. Like a year or two after I left Geo Television, 2 or 3 years later, there was a fire in the studios. They need to keep them maintained at a certain temperature. So there was also something else that I was looking at in tandem with this. And it's so funny. I was looking at the flu issues that were arising in 2004, and I actually talked to somebody in Dawn is one of the largest English publications of Pakistan. So I was talking to the Dawn. They have this weekly magazine called Science Magazine, and I was talking to Dawn Science Magazine when the SARS flu thing happened in China and I think Hong Kong and Taiwan, and some kind of infection traveled all the way to Karachi and across the city, and people started getting red eyes. I think it's called conjunctivitis or whatever, and flu. So I got a massive flu bout in 2004, and remember I had joined just a few months ago. To the extent that one of my bosses told me, like, why are you even turning up for the job? You should take rest. And I was like, I wouldn't take rest. But I felt like flu was really tanking my ability. So unbeknownst to me, these things were going to become important in future. But I was weirdly enough instinctively studying that. And I did talk to the science editor. His name was Khalid. I don't remember his full name now, Khalid Mahmood or something. And I said, Khalid Saab, which is Mr. Khalid, if you don't know what Sahib means in Urdu. Mr. Khalid, I'm very curious about how flu is impacting our entire office. People, like, everybody's absent. I can't focus, and this really must be impacting the economy in some way. And he said, yeah, why don't you go ahead and study that? Prior to that, now let me put in some other dots here. Prior to that, around 2001, 2002, and this is the crazy part, I was studying around the web, watching videos, watching movies about the subject of 9/11. And this is something that's going to get me in trouble, but I happened to have chanced upon some news that were appearing basically on conspiracy theory websites, which talked about how some virus labs in the world were breached. And they said something is coming. Okay. And for those who are in the know of 9/11, there was a massive anthrax fear being spoken of at that time. A lot of mail was intercepted, which was headed towards White House, etc. They were saying somebody is going to make a biological attack on basically the West or the USA, because the USA was the center of attention at the time, fighting a war on terror or whatever. And so there was an anthrax scare, etc. Meanwhile, I did read news of virus labs being breached, and um, a Harvard. I should bring this in. I didn't expect that I will speak of this. A Harvard virus expert. Sorry, I'm putting all this stuff here. Um, was found dead in mysterious circumstances. So I had read that in 2001 and 2, and I'll tell you what. I think around 2004, I tried to Google this stuff up, and when my mouse reached the links, the browser closed. It was weird. So I'll tell you what further I did, because I used to go into rabbit holes even back then. I typed in some keywords like virus lab and the name of that website, the conspiracy theory website, and about 10 or more links appeared on the page. If I steered my mouse clear of those links and I went down to the fourth or fifth link, which was not that website's link, the page stayed open. But if I went to the first top three links, which pointed to that website, the browser closed. I was shocked and I was like, I need to tell this to somebody. So I thought of contacting the Guardian. I picked up the name and email of a Guardian journalist randomly by going to the Guardian's website. And I sent them an email and I said, go and check page XYZ on Wikipedia. You really have to stay with me because I'm writing words everywhere right now. Okay. I didn't plan to talk about it, but I'm talking about it. I said, I picked up a dead page on Wikipedia and I edited one line saying, you need to go and check this conspiracy theory website about this virus story. So I wanted to talk to some Guardian journalists about this virus thing, but I knew it was kind of scandalous enough. So I went and picked up really one of those dead pages on Wikipedia that nobody goes to. It's sort of a dead page, and I edited a line. And suppose the Guardian journalist was Mr. X, whatever. So I said, Mr. X, you need to go to XYZ website and check these pages, what's there. Well, Mr. X never responded to my email. I don't think anybody ever read it, so I reverted that page and cleaned it up, I suppose, and was like, let me get out of here. Something told me to get away from there. So that was sort of a dot in my brain. 2002. I read that because 9/11 happened in 2001. One of my friends was reading up a conspiracy theory website, and she said, why don't you go and read it? That website was, created well before 9/11 and was studying some other issues. And when 9/11 happened, they were like, whoa, this thing has happened. How is this connected? Blah, blah. I was the kind of person who sort of went with the official narrative, right? I was like, I'm not going to go into these rabbit holes because I knew and I believe that there were some issues in the Muslim world for sure. Rightly or wrongly, many Muslims were going down a path of terror ism. And there wasn't any clarity in the Muslim world where this was the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. This seemed to go against the tenets of our faith. And yet our faith asks us to do jihad, which actually means struggle. All right, so we'll talk about this also briefly here, and I'll make a different video on that. But certainly we felt that some of what the Muslim response was reactionary, some was almost needed, some was self-defense, some was necessary, whatever, but it was not totally in alignment with our faith. And there was a lot of internal disruption within Muslim countries where common citizens were being affected by the more extreme response of some of the Muslims. And before I walk away from here, I'll tell you what my solution to that is. My solution to that is that as long as there is an extremist element, as well as sleepy people, right, the extreme gets extremer. But when people, the whole collective starts uniting, suppose there are like 25 million people in Pakistan, As long as there are like 100,000 or 2,500,000 people only who care about everything, they will become more extreme in their actions and reactions because they are taking the burden of everybody else. But if you want to normalize them, you need to awaken everybody else. And that's when people become sort of like a fortified, what in Islam is called ummah, or the nation. When you all are good enough, then the extremists do not have to be extreme enough. That's my solution, right? And you have to build your society and be creative. And in that case, you will actually not be attacked and affected by other people. And instead of fighting with them, you probably would be doing trade with them and doing business with them on equal measure. So this is an issue of being organized, awakened, and strong enough. I'm solving a huge issue right here. Anyway, so I was studying this virus thing, and then 2004 flu happened to me. It really tanked my own health, etc. I stayed home um, and read books. And then the 2004 tsunami happened in December 2004, and I was like, the earth is calling me. Prior to that, there was a bit of a thing going on in my own family where we had, and this story is becoming a big landscape. We had a masculine feminine divide. Oh, sorry, feminine. Okay. And it there wasn't only a masculine feminine divide, there was also some sort of warp going on here. I'll tell you what the warp was. Masculine feminine divide in our family was that the mother's side was more contemplative and more education oriented, etc., and the father's side was more worldly. However, the father's side said, it's so funny, the father's side said that if you want to conquer the world, etc., you need to take care of your home and you need to organize yourself and you need to be like more domestic inside out, right? But however, they were getting stuck in the domestic phases only. The mother's side was more outward looking, professionals, etc. And weirdly enough, while they cared for psychology and ecology and children's development, all the soft issues, they were doing that through domestic, sorry. They were doing that through education, right? And that is, in Pakistan's case, Western education. You go to school, they teach you ABC, etc., and then you go on to your career path. So there was kind of a synthesis to be made in my own family where we could bring the two sides together. These people wanted us to succeed in the world, and they were very outward looking. We want you to be socially presentable. We want you to be this and that. But they said start with home, and they got stuck here. And these people focused on the internal development of the human being. However, they were using outside tools of schooling and education, but got stuck in the outside world where everybody was taking the path of. A lot of them were teachers and were ending up ignoring their home. So there was a huge synthesis to be made here. And I saw that right away as a teenager. Okay, I saw that. I was like, they're all talking of the same thing. It's just that you need to sort of put that thing in a rhythm. And there are other issues to take care of. People should not live too far from their, your place of education, your work, and your family should not be too far. I reached those conclusions very early on, also because my parents actually talked about it. Because they had, or my father at least had a government job, and he would have to go away from his family. There were issues that we were experiencing, never blown out of proportion because our family was decent enough to take care of us and send us to good schools and keep us neat and clean and well fed. But we felt that if everything was kind of more closer, it would just be better for everybody. And this is a conclusion I reached a long time ago. At the same time, I was studying Sufism and about um, architecture and design and so forth. And the conclusion that I was coming to is that the more we design society in such a way where everything is kind of close by your work, your life, your passion, etc., the better it is. In time, this has come to be called the eco village structure, where people are close to their families, where they sort of grow in a certain circuit, unless there's some extraordinary genius that needs to leave the village behind and go. But eco villages are not some kind of regressive villages where everybody is oppressed. These are open minded, inclusive, pluralistic, very forward looking villages where people are educated and so on and so forth. In the Himalayas in Pakistan and Gilgit Baltistan, you can find such villages, especially the ones that have been trained by. By the Aga Khan Institutes, if I may go ahead and just name them. Not saying that they don't have internal issues, because human psyche already has always has something to throw up. So there are issues of addiction, poverty, and obviously you cannot just generate your own village and just make it work, because you are being impacted by outside influences in politics and so on and so forth. So all these villages, even here in Gilgit-Baltistan, even right now, are being impacted by global politics, especially because Gilgit-Baltistan is situated in a place where you have Afghanistan and AFC and Russia and China on one side, geographically, right, and India on the other side, and USA sort of putting its impact on far. So this is really a very interesting place where you can study all the cultures of the world, and also many of the people who are living here are sort of descendants of Iranian races. So you have Iran here as well. So you have all sorts of global influences, particularly the eastern one, nexus, right? Isn't it getting complicated and interesting? So this tsunami happened, and I'm like, I'm being driven to care for the earth. I don't know how to do that. Eventually, by May 2005, I just left. I said, nah, I can't do this anymore. I need to move towards the environment. And I was looking to do something for the environment, something for human development and for the world. And I started teaching entrepreneurship in Iqra University starting summer of uh, 2005. Cut my hair short, went to Iqra, started teaching entrepreneurship. In the last session, I taught 2 semesters, one a summer and a winter semester. And at the end of the summer semester, I turned around to my students and I said, why do we earn money? Because I had been teaching them about making business plans, um, supply lines, how to generate ideas, and I was really solving a lot of their problems and creating some for them. At the end of the first semesters, the last session, I turned around. I had free time because I had taught them everything, and I turned around and said, "Why do we earn money? Why do we make money? Sorry, why do we do business? Why do we do business?" And they said, "For making money." And somehow my heart sank. So, by the way, I had two type sides to my personality. I definitely want to make wealth and money, but I'm also very concerned with welfare aspects of people. So I was at that time in 2004 and 5 tapping into a number of things. I was tapping into returning more to home and yet exploring your potential and growing out from there. I was wondering about my health. So when I left, um, in May 2005, I was very sick for a long time. And then I shifted to a different sunny room in my own house and put plants there, etc., and realized that home office was a thing. A sunny, a beautiful home office. So I was on to that movement since 2005 and 6. Okay, I was like, this is the thing, this is the future. And I need to build home office. And when I establish my practice, if I'm earning money, I need to travel because I love to travel. I need to reach out to other people. Also, I need to take my idea out to other people, and I need to write that down in my diary. Meanwhile, my parents were not part of my cook it plan, and they were like, "Why don't you return to office? Why don't you get married to this and that?" And when I was younger, I was very ambitious. I used to tell them of my plans. I want to do MBA, and I want to do join. A media organization. I want to do advertising, etc., etc. And I had been doing that since 1996, right? And at first, my parents did not approve of my plan. So it's so funny that by the time that I had reached this place and I was starting to go back to their ideas of when my mother used to tell me about ecological issues and blah blah blah, and I was sort of returning to that. And when any issues and problems happened to me, particularly also because my parents made me feel guilty, like all parents, or I felt guilty or responsible, like what if we listened to our parents better and things would be better. I started feeling like if I'm getting flu or this or that, if I did things the way my parents told me, things would be far better. If I ate meat, if I ate, all the good food that they told me, if I sat more in sunlight, as my mom used to keep on telling me, if I did not turn on AC in my room at all times, I'd be far better. So started looking into that. I wanted a template for health. I I got books on feng shui, which is the art of arrangement of elements in your room, and I got books on yoga, etc. Sadly, our families talk a lot about this, but they do not want to go out of their ancestral frameworks. So if you try to do yoga and feng shui, they don't really get it, and they would talk a lot about it, but would not let you arrange things. And I did not have autonomy and power enough to overrule them. I could not even move furniture around in my room as I wanted to do. And that was a whole other domestic issue that I was being totally consumed by. And I later discovered that our house was actually kind of a sick house. There was wetness in the house, um, and it was affecting all of us. So when I shifted out of that dark, unlit, wet room to a more sunny room, my health absolutely improved. My face improved. I was a different person. I used to be fat and fatigued before, and in the other room, I turned into really beautiful. And outside of that room was our garden. So I used to pray in the garden. I used to spend a lot of time in the garden and around plants, as my mother always wanted us to. And my health improved. I was like, this is the ticket. This is great. Instead of sitting in cold, dank offices where we are spending a lot of money, keeping the office cold, etc., how about we work from our home offices? And that would also lower the electric cost, etc., because that was also something that I was thinking about, especially when all this stuff was going on Earth. Now, I'm going to weave this tapestry together where I was studying this 9/11 thing. I didn't have to go into it and study it. It was already in the news everywhere. I was watching videos, and there was always the issue of how oil was the reason why we were human beings are fighting. So I thought to myself that if we consume less or consume in more elegant ways or sort of stack our consumption, for example, if in one room you are already going to heat it or cool it or whatever it is that you want to do, if it's a nice room, why don't you do two or three things in that room instead of taking a lot of square space? And these are some of the things I taught to my students in entrepreneurship as well, things about stacking your business. So, in one example, one of my students came to me. I failed him in the first semester. He joined in the next, and he looked like a totally different, brilliant, clean up man in the next. And I said, "What's up? Why have you joined me next?" And he said, "Ma'am, even if you fail me, I'm doing well in life, and your advice is changing my life. So it is just an optional course to me. It was an evening class, like an extra study thing that some professionals were doing. They were not like pure students." And they were like, the evening students in MBA classes tend to be people who already have shops and businesses and they just want to study extra in order to learn about business. And one thing he told me, for example, was that he had a shop, and he was selling mobile phone covers and accessories and part of it. And the other part was a little space where his friends would put their bench and sit and chat. And he said, when I heard you telling me that I can make better use of my square footage of my shop, I put those friends out. I said goodbye, and I let somebody put their photostat machine in that other part of the shop, and I opened something else as well, like a juice thing or whatever. And I basically multiplied the income from my shop. I added extra income streams. It's not my photostat thing. I do take a little bit of commission or percentage, but it's somebody else's machine, so they're earning from it. It's extra income for some other person. I get a bit of percentage, and I'm sort of leveraging my space. And I said that's great. So I was teaching these people these little tips of how to leverage things, etc. And I really wanted to scale that to take that to the rest of the country, etc. as well. So, May 2005, I left you. I was at home. I was really scared, by the way. I was really exhausted due to my really excessive work, being struck by flu and air conditioning, etc. And I was teaching at Ikra University and totally disoriented by some of my situationship, relationship issues. By the way, somebody was after me and was trying to take advantage of me and trying to take advantage of my work networks because of my reputation in geo. And thankfully, God took him out of my life. I actually prayed for this person to be out of my life. Sometime in 2005, when the Hajj khutbah was taking place, which was certainly around, I think, summertime at that time, I was overhearing it in my room and kind of crying. And I said, God, I want to go to pilgrimage in Makkah and see the Kaaba. Like, God, I just want to see you. And it so happened that in August 2005, incidentally, I got to make a pilgrimage, literally instantly within months or even weeks. And that also came about in a really interesting way. Since I'm telling you stories, I'll tell you what happened. My brother was signed to go to the USA, and on his way, he was going to stop for Umrah and then go to the USA. Umrah is mini pilgrimage, and Hajj is a bigger pilgrimage. So Umrah you can do in a week or something, and Hajj takes 30, 40 days because it has rituals which are timed apart. And in this pilgrimage, Muslims, which Hajj is a once in a lifetime pilgrimage, you have to make it at least once if you have the capacity and the means to do so. All Muslims are supposed to do it. So you have to do it at least once. Umrah is a smaller pilgrimage and it's optional. You can do it many times. A lot of people do both Umrah and Hajj as many times as they can. It's a matter of privilege and capacity, and unfortunately, unequally distributed privilege. All right, we'll get into that some other day. So he was supposed to go there, but somehow his whole thing got thwarted when he was supposed to finish off his semester in Pakistan, get his degree or whatever, and then move on to the USA. And he couldn't finish that semester because when he was going to submit a certain report on which he was going to be marked and then get his graduation, that day was a strike in Pakistan, Karachi, sorry. And he met some fireworks on the way, like some disturbances on the way, people setting fire to tires, etc., road blocking, etc. He came back. He tried to submit the report by other means, but the university didn't accept it. So his semester in Pakistan lapsed, and so he went after some months to the USA. And then when he was going to go after those few months and then join his university in USA, my father said, since you have a bit of extra time, why don't you take your mother and sister to Umrah and then drop them back to Pakistan and then fly away? And so this is how my Umrah came about. So my prayer came true, Alhamdulillah. Um, but it cost my family. So I went on an Umrah, and it was in August 2005, and that's when I prayed that all these false attachments around me kind of drop, and I particularly prayed for that annoying person who was after me to get away from me, and I literally held the cloth of Kaaba, and I didn't pray for me as much as I prayed for him. I said, "Get him out of my life," and that person went away. It was a really scary attachment to the extent that I even, when that person had come into my life, I even saw the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Sorry about the noise in the background. I even saw the Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu peace be upon him, in my dream looking really gloomy, and he showed me bricks being made at a kiln, right? Where bricks were made, and bricks were like in something like a cake mold, and he tilted that mold, and water drained out of it, kind of showing that this brick will not set, right? And while he didn't say anything in that dream, I didn't even see his face. I was seeing him and myself from the back. I kind of understood that he's saying something that you're doing is not going to set. And it was a really bad attachment. It's taken me years and years to understand my attachment past and how I was getting drawn into all these things and why was I getting swept away by all these distractions. And it has something to do with my being a very not mature person, and also a lot of influences on my brain that used to sway me and drift me apart here and there. I was really scared of all the terror incidents, etc. The internet swayed my brain as well as people were deliberately impacting me, and that person was one of those people who later told me that he tried to actually hypnotize me, and he studied me and tried to mirror me, etc., in order to impact me. So I always had a double feeling about him. That is the person who walked out of my life on October 8th of all other days and woke me up and told me how he met somebody because he was pursuing me and he met somebody on a flight and he said, um, the girl that I met yesterday, he took a flight with her the day before and told me I met some. He was trying to find a job and he was basically pursuing me so that I could help him find a job using my contacts. And I did that before, but he was leaving all those jobs that he was getting through my contacts, and that was really severely disrupting my reputation. So that is what was happening. But the day before October 8th, on October 7th, he met a person, basically an HR person, um, uh, in the airport. And the moment he told me that, I met that girl. Remember, I applied for this certain job, and this I met the HR woman, and I said, "Why don't you guys give us a job?" And the moment I had this like click in my heart, I said, "This guy's going to move on." And thank God for that. So on October 8th, he wakes me up and he says, that girl called me and she said, there's an earthquake because of you. And I said, oh, yeah, that's radiation or whatever it is. But that person was out of my path that time, that day. And my path cleared up to what I was moving towards. So coming towards your path, you see a lot of distractions and people who are coming towards you and attaching themselves to you, and you can have major distractions. So that person was somebody who later confessed that he was jealous of my work and he wanted to attach himself to me. And that is something that I've faced very often. I'll tell you what the solution for me became. The solution for me became was focusing on myself. And in this is the lesson for people as well, that if you want to become something, you have to rise out of distraction and become yourself. And that is how you're going to solve your problems. Right? So I'm sort of skipping ahead to lead to the conclusion of how I learned my own lesson by looking at the work that I was doing for other people and take a lesson from it myself. So I was teaching people entrepreneurship in 2005 and telling them, if you do a job, if you do businesses, etc., it is going to strengthen our country, and by extension the Muslim Ummah, and then the rest of the world, whoever wants to be strengthened, because I'm in favor of all the good people of the world, regardless of their faith and regardless of their nations, etc. All human beings need to have some kind of template of bringing themselves to a path that works for them in multiple ways. And this is what my model, the Salaam Matrix, is about. Now, in my last session, during the summer 2005 semester, I turned around to people. I said, "Why do we do business?" And they said, "We do business for money." And my heart sank, and I was like, "We don't do business just for money. We do it for people." And that is what led me to the creation of the Salaam Matrix. So let me wipe this and get back to you with what the Salaam Matrix is. Ta-da! PC Mob. That was the first name of the Salaam Matrix, which stood for people centered. And I actually should be calling it people centered model of business. That's the name that I came up at that time. I turned around to my class students and said, "Why do we do business? We do it for money." I said, "No, we do it for customers. We do it for our clients to serve their needs." So I turned around and I started drawing a map of how our markets or our clients have different needs. I said, "Look, they pray every day. They need to feed their families. They need to transport. They need to walk. So you can give them some cycle or something. That's your solution. That's their need, and this is your solution. Feed. You give them food of various sorts. If they pray, you can also build like the places of worship or whatever teachings and places. Uh, so this is more of a soft area. Um, they um, they need tools. You give them tools. Um, so they have to work. So you give them tools, etc. So I define different needs, and I define them in terms of their roles. Like the parents, I said, think about what parents need. Parents need blankets. Parents need food. Parents need services also, such as babysitting. Okay. So I said you can basically map hundreds of needs, because there was sort of a thing that people had trouble with in entrepreneurship classes, particularly when you talk to MBAs, and they cannot generate business ideas. And when they generate business ideas, some of them are really silly. Oh, I'm going to have, I don't know, um, 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 a glitter filled soap. That I heard when I was doing MBA myself in the late 1990s. I was like, who would do that? But now we have glitter filled soap. Wouldn't you better rather have eczema healing soap than have a glitter filled soap, which is actually going to give you eczema and other problems? So I wanted to solve people's problems. I drew this model and people were shocked. I was like, this is why you do business. You are going to match your ideas to their actual needs. So this gives you a template to look at. They were shocked. In the months ahead, I sat home, and because I taught for only another semester, the autumn winter semester, which is when October 8th took place, an earthquake, and things went to another level. But the next year, I spent in front of my computer in my room, at my home, refining the PC mob, which has in 2023 become the Salam Matrix. That was in 2005. This was the PC mob. Now, this model came to me in summer 2005. I was refining it next year in 2006. And I basically said, I realized that all these roles that people play, we can define them as roles. They're parents, they're workers, they're this and that. I will identify roles and then the needs attached to those roles. And then what services we can give them in response. And I realized that all these roles basically fall into spiritual, four different categories: spiritual, personal, familial, like you as a person and your family, socio-economic, and ecological, political, leaving nothing out behind, right? This is what human beings or citizens or markets do. Hold on. Ecological political roles. And we need to serve their needs. So obviously, I was starting off with MBA, and at that time we were looking at business needs, and sometimes businesses can also serve ecological political needs, not in a political capacity, but as a service providers. For example, if there's a political campaign taking place, you can always provide people sticker printing services and so on, independent of political affiliations or in line with your political beliefs, depending upon what the rules of the day are and what you can get away with, basically. But later on, I figured out that we can use this model to go beyond the realm of business and go into policy making and people defining themselves as well. And that evolution has taken place over the years, and basically connected to the second leap that this model, which I later on sort of moved away from after writing this down. I actually wrote the PC Mob down in 2026 and published it on 2006, sorry, not 26, and published this online as a PDF and sent this around to people, and they became really excited. I started getting consultancy offer, but I could not translate this model into anything practical, not for small businesses. It is actually a model for policymakers, thinkers, and people who are going to develop downstream services from this model, or this can be used for really targeted advice for a business to answer their own questions. In that case, they will not be studying the whole general market, they will be studying the particular segment that they want to look at. For example, if you have a consumer goods business and they use this model, so they're going to look at some of the personal familial needs of people and definitely not the spiritual needs, and uh, definitely not the political needs. So if you give it to somebody like Unilever, they will be looking at what needs this person has in their home, like soaps and uh, edibles and other stuff, cleaning and food and whatever. Now that some of these conglomerates are going out of Pakistan and other countries, in the light of events that took place in October 7th in particular, we need this model in order to generate alternatives. Just making it directly as to what we can do and how we can use this model, and how this model helped me put things on one page. And at the time, I could feel the predictive value of this thing. I was like, we're going to need this, we're going to need this. So yeah, I'm going to take a little bit of break and resume this video. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Back we are. So I was teaching entrepreneurship. I was dealing with a number of things. I was dealing with a sense of failure for having walked away from my job while I knew I wanted to do my own thing. I couldn't figure out what my thing was. And as I'm processing this video, a lot of things are coming together for me. While we were in the middle of the second semester, and that person, the distraction was constantly coming after me while I was trying to get rid of them, but that person was not able to get another job and move on, and was coming after me while God was doing his secret work to connect them to somebody who this man then attached himself to and married and went abroad with, thank God, but not with any amount of ease. This is a really bad vibes person. Anyway, um, and these kind of characters do attract themselves to and associate themselves to people like me. I'm dealing with them all the time, and I've been dealing with them particularly since 2005. I've noticed each time I try to do something good, these people attack me. Just last week, I had to take yet another crazy person to the police, and now I have developed my algorithm for dealing with these people, and I'm also seeing the connection between the events. So what I see is that, and this is taught in a lot of self-development teachings as well, is that there's a world of chaos around us or action, and then we have to focus on our reaction. And we, through our, this is my saying, through our own intention and our project building, will build the world. Project building, constructive work. So this is not just something that is to do only with your character, but also to do with your action and knowledge, plus nation building. Because we fall apart in one place or the other. It's not like we don't have good people, we don't have good nation building, right? And when we do nation building, it's very coercive. It is done by radical elements, people who do not even understand the softer side and element of life. And then they try to coerce us, and then people bounce back, and everything falls apart. So Allah, in His gigantic wisdom and blessing, gave me a model that caters to everything all at once. October 8th was when, in the Kashmir region of Pakistan region, an earthquake took place. Media was not very well developed in Pakistan at that time, and the government or the state has always been careful about what news to deliver to people. Let me say something about that. I don't think the state is completely or wholly malevolent. I think the issue is that people are not very educated. And if people are not educated and they do not have the capacity to bear and process information, it's very difficult for a state to deliver you information that you cannot handle. We have a country where even educated people cannot handle the information. So, how are you going to develop your capacity to take in the information and process this correctly is through your education and self development. And that is not the job of the state. This is something that is a software element, and that is going to come from the mothers of the nation in particular, the software element, the human beings who know more about your psyche than anybody else. Mothers are psyche readers, they know parts of your personality that even your fathers don't. Okay, so October 8th happened, massive collapse, everything in disarray. I was in Karachi. This took place in Kashmir. I was awakened from it. I was really under a lot of depression, feeling really slow, moving towards a new field in life where I was teaching. And that came to me with a lot of baggage because I wanted to teach since I was a teenager, which was in the 1990s. And finally, I was beginning to do it. And I didn't even have the right tools to teach. For example, I needed a whiteboard in my home since 2008 or 5 or 6 ish, but I never had it. I got it in 2023. Finally. And this thing helps me process information. I got a lot of digital tools, but I felt that the digital tools actually distracted me. Digital equals distraction. I would always get distracted by moving more and more into exploring the internet, which is a never-ending source of newer and inchoate and distracted information. Anyway, so this happened, and I volunteered in it. I had gathered knowledge from my study of how IBM helped, and basically, I turned up at PAF Museum where Karachi people were collecting massive amounts of aid, and I went there. I think on October 10th, right? Um, Already, world had moved in massive ways on October 8th in the morning. This incident happened 8th, 9th, and by 10th I went there on the evening of 10th, I believe, or if not 11th. Wow, this means exactly 20 years ago. I went there with my brother to drop some aid. It was Ramadan time, and Ramadan, fast, the month of fasting. And for the first time I had started offering taraweeh, which is a long night prayer, optional for women and compulsory for men. This is a long prayer that you do after the evening hours. So in Islam, the day starts at evening, at sunset, and it goes from sunset to sunset. So your fasting starts at dawn, actually, and it breaks at sunset. And from sunset to dawn, you can eat and do whatever it is that you want to. And meanwhile, in the later evening hours, you do something like Tarawih. So I was doing Tarawih since a while. I think it was the 4th or 5th of Ramadan when October 10th arrived. And I talked to the people around me, and I said, people in the field need more help. Why don't we gather some clothes and deliver some aid to them? So my neighbors gathered clothes, and I went to the PF Museum with my youngest brother. When I went there, it was total chaos, like complete gigantic dump. I was about to leave that place after evening prayers myself when something in my heart called me and said, "You need to be present here, and you need to help." So I stayed. I still had my Geo badge with me because I had not basically cleared up my account with Geo and signed off from the company. So I put my badge around my neck and started walking around in the field, and people started paying attention to me. They were dismissing me before. All the younglings were not even paying attention to me. So I started working at around 7:30 or 8, and by 11 I had that field, my part of the BF Museum, not all of it, organized. I was given a megaphone by the PAF, which is the Air Force personnel, and some of the Army personnel were there as well. They looked shell shocked. I understood that massive uh, disruption had taken place in the Kashmir region. We were already using Google and Google Maps, which, by the way, the army did not know of much because the army wasn't using the internet. And this is when we are entering the mysterious part of the story that a lot of Pakistanis may not know of, particularly the young Pakistanis. So what happened was that the army suffered massive damages in Kashmir, and they were not going to talk about it because they were really scared that if our arch enemy, so-called arch enemy, India, found out, they would attack Pakistan. However, India was decent, and India obviously had their own intelligence sources to know what happened in Pakistan. And I think there was a little bit of damage on the Indian Kashmir side as well. But India said, "We are not going to attack you. We're not going to take advantage of that." But the army was really scared. Even if India was not going to do anything, they suffered a lot of damage. They didn't know what to do with it, how to deal with it. And that is when somebody, all the bloggers, etc. By the way, I was a blogger. I was a blogger since 2003. Blogger. Okay. So we used to have our blogging meetups, etc. Bloggers were quite a power. I could totally feel like social media was going to make a difference. We're going to use it some positive way, and we were using our blogs and our influence to raise funds, etc. So that gave us a massive leverage at that time. Um, Bloggers were able to help Pakistan as well as the incident helped bloggers really gain a lot of traction. So while I'm talking to you, I'm processing this information myself. I was facing or I was seeing a lot of chaos, some in my internal life and a lot in my outer life. And because when you are afraid of what is happening on the outside, 9/11 and this and that, it really scares you and you're not able to build what I call an internal content matter. Where should I write it? Internal content matter. You really have to follow my flow because I write everywhere in my word. Internal content matter you have to develop, and that becomes your immunity against the outer world. This is your immunity, right? You need to have substance. You need to have internal content matter or substance. When you do not have a personality, when you do not have your strengths, and not just your personality in your mind, you actually need to put things in practice and make out projects, develop deliverable projects. From a thought stage to a delivery stage, you need to have a mechanism, and that is when you make something of the world intentionally. You become something. It is a process of becoming, and our becoming overcomes the chaos of the world. We'll talk more about that. October 8th happened, and so we were in the BF Museum organizing help, and I'm able to read people's faces, particularly because also my job in geo television involved reading people and selecting them from on-screen roles. So I am a people reader. I'm a people reader. I actually have done courses on body language as well as uh, profiling. I studied these things, right? So I have not done a course on profiling, but I know how it's done and what this thing is. I've known this since the 1990s when I was a teenager myself. Don't mind the noise in the background. And body language, I studied this through books, and then I did a study on this that I designed myself during my BBA time. And then I studied this uh, as a hobby. I study people. And then part of my job literally in Geo was to hire anchors for screen. So I used to audition them and test them. And I developed a 10 point criteria for testing people, voice, diction, presentation. I don't remember. There was really scary criteria. I used to mark them on each criteria out of 1 to 10. And then out of a total 100, we would develop a score. And then I would actually write down my uh, verbal notes as well, my written notes as well, as to what was weak in that candidate and what was strong. So, for example, if your vocabulary was really poor but your accent was great, that didn't really match up. So you had to meet somewhere in the middle with all that. That was the kind of scary person I was. And that's the kind of thing that I do and develop, right? So a lot of people don't know that. They try to teach me things which I've totally mastered. And I have actually designed myself, that I find funny and offensive. Anyway, so when this happened and I was in the field, I could read the faces of these army people and went without telling. And based on the information that was safely and quietly being shared amongst bloggers, we realized that basically Pakistan has taken a huge hit to our assets and resources, particularly in the contentious or delicate Kashmir region. And for a while, we knew that through media also, because there were whispers of that, and basically Pakistanis were very nice at the time, advising each other how to care for our country, and the whole country was rushing to help Kashmir and also our army at that time. And the bloggers, some of whom were really technical and knew a lot about Google Maps and were actually, they had paid subscription to Google Map, which I didn't, were able to extract maps of the region out. So I remember at that time there were two maps, two very detailed maps, each of about 3 MB each, that really showed the destruction. And here's the funny part: like the army hadn't seen a thing like that. I think, they probably didn't even, at the institutional level, they didn't even know that something like this existed. They didn't take the internet seriously or whatever. It was not something that they knew. Like, I don't know much about robots right now, or I wouldn't know about certain aspects of fashion designing or whatever it is. There's so many trends taking place, or certain kinds of, like, a trendy kind of burger or shawarma. I don't know about that, right? So it was there, but they were not paying attention to it, and they were really into traditional media and hierarchies and roles, as the armies of the world tend to be. So that was a flipping point for not just our army, but the armies of the world, which were through these massive incidents like the tsunami of 2004, etc. Events that are normally around the world handled by armies, because it's the armies in the world that have the discipline and the workforce ready for, at the beck and call of whoever calls them, the commanders, to uh, turn up and then solve the issues. But now we were dealing with issues of a magnitude and a type where the capacities of the traditional armies of the world were really not matching up and catching up. And the job of the army, by definition, the traditional army, by definition, is to create absolute order as soon as possible. It is in their DNA, right? So they were not able to deal with more chaotic chaos and the outcomes of it on the psyches and minds of people, like people losing jobs, like people suffering trauma. Now, that's something that an army just cannot handle. So this was a time when the hard elements of the world were in an inevitable meeting with the soft elements of the world, a meeting of two worlds, a collision of worlds. So these tectonic plates of this psyche, as I call them, were meeting and banging together. And I could totally tell that there's something, reorganization and restructuring taking place in the world. Why do people have to lose life? Well, unfortunately, this is part and parcel of evolution. One thing that Muslims can be assured of is that all the good souls that leave life are immediately transferred into good places, and this world is a temporary place. So we do not take it that personally. However, it's a source of grief for the people who are in the world matrix, are not able to lift themselves out of this simulation and ephemera that we are in, into the beyond. And that is why Muslims have a practice of deliberately and every day looking at the beyond and remembering there's a life outside of it. It's kind of like losing your phone. When you lose your phone, you don't really lose your reality. However, you lose your attachment to the phone, you lose your mind for a while, to the extent that you are totally lost in your phone or lost in the simulation. So that is the bigger picture of all that. For all those people who are going to call God cruel, the fact is that this world is like a little something and there is something outside of it. So we go into the outside and we persist there and we live there. And through spiritual and meditational practice, you can actually start while you are in this world, seeing, standing in the outside, and you can actually get an experience of that, by the way. Um, and that in Sufism is called die before you die, right? Die before you die. Prayer time here, die before you die. I am going to conclude this video right here. probably, and then make another video. So let's take leave of you here, and I'll come back to you with another video to talk about these subjects and how I am on a journey, not even realizing that, of making something while chaos is taking place, and how I'm being taught by life that the extent to which you can take control of what you take control of is the extent that you are free from the fallouts of the chaos, and your confidence builds and your ability to build a world builds to the extent that you can probably even start overcoming these natural distractions, etc., and be prepared ahead of time and probably begin to influence the course of events as well. I'll be quiet now. See you in the next video, inshallah. Stay with me and share with people. Comment, leave your comments, leave your questions. Before I put up the next part of this video, you can start sharing your reflections about 8 October if you're in Pakistan, and what are your memories and attachments with this thing are. Press the bell icon, share, subscribe, whatever it is that you do. I'm not very savvy with that. Thank you. And these are my channels, the Eco Feminine and the Salaam Matrix. See you around. Go check the websites as well. But the most updated content is here on YouTube. So stay with me here. Thank you. Salam. Salam, I'm Ramallah and Hubb'Allah is my pen name. To the people and the police of Pakistani Himalayas who often ask what my sources of income are, I earn a little when I have peace, which is rare in the south and rare in the north too, alas. My parents fund my life and work. However, I earn from herbalism, selling things, and teaching people occasionally. If you have any objections, which you often do, please make a written note and file a case. We will respond in media and, if need be, in any court of your choice around the world. You will also have to explain your sources of income to us. We hope those are clean. We hope there is no such thing as trafficking and other vices. Well, don't disappoint. Visit the salammatrix.org. Salam.